Welcome to the Dan Casper Show podcast, your chance to catch the full show anytime, anywhere. If you missed it live on the radio, no worries. We've got you covered with all the sports talk, opinions, interviews, and conversations from the show. From the Packers to the Brewers to the biggest stories in sports and around Wisconsin, it's all right here. This is the Dan Casper Show podcast. Second quarter kicking off right now on this Friday morning of April 24th. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning and making us a part of your starts. We'll do a little local sports roundup brought to you by Carpet City Flooring Center coming up in a little bit with Mr. Brandon Berg. We also have our AJM Automotive Pump the Brakes full throttle, a little cream of the crop too. So lots of stuff to get to. We'll get to some more baseball talk, some hoops with the Bucks getting Taylor Jenkins as their head coach, and, of course, the NFL Draft round 2 and 3 coming your way tonight. We kick off this hour with our good buddy, Mr. Dr. Austin Crowe, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Hey, I gotta ask. Caleb Banks is the Vikings pick. So first off, your thoughts on that, but it also kind of fits with our segment too, because there is some concern. I've seen some from Vikings fans about he broke his foot at the combine, the fourth metatarsal in his foot. So it kind of worked out that, hey, I get to talk to Dr. Crowe about his pick, but also the injury here now too. So
that's right.
First off, your thoughts on the pick.
I don't dislike it. I mean, clearly we have needs there. I mean, we had two big free agency signings last year, and both those guys just didn't fit well into our defensive scheme. Obviously, one is now here in Green Bay. And I can't remember where Curse went. But either way, we definitely have some holes there. I'd say, as far as needs, that's definitely top 2 or 3 needs on the team. So it's not like an outlandish pick. Clearly, this is, we've had these discussions in the past where we have players that are, dropping down the board. I think if you'd have, before he had that injury, he was predicted to be a much higher pick. So I think the ceiling is incredibly high. The concern is that this is getting into that realm where it's like, it wasn't just the fact he injured his foot, it's the fact that he missed a bunch of the season with a foot issue. Now, looking back, because he wasn't really high on my, draft picks that I was kind of following. So I kind of had to read on it a little bit. It isn't exactly clear what the foot issue was that kept him out, but if I'm just going to read between the lines, my assumption is that he was dealing with a stress fracture in his foot, and that's what nagged him, and he missed it because he only played in 3 games this season. So he missed a good chunk of the season with his foot issue, and then come combine, I think it was during a 40-yard dash, he broke it. So my suspicion is that there was a pre-existing stress fracture that went on and completed. They fixed it. Per reports, it's healing well. I will say, metatarsal stress fractures are not rare. I mean, we see them. Usually we see them in runners, like long-distance runners. And then, of course, we just talked about the Jones fracture, I think, last week or the week before, so the 5th metatarsal. So the 4th is not, classic for that same issue. So what I'm getting at is if it heals, it should heal well and not be a problem. That being said, again, it was something that appears, again, I'm reading between the lines, it appears to be a recurrent issue, but if it did go from a stress fracture to a complete fracture and then it heals, it should be healed. That's the cool thing about bone. Once it heals, it tends to stay healed. So, so to sum it up, I think, if he pans out, obviously a good value pick. I mean, he clearly was more like top 10 talent, but that's the gamble. Like if the foot becomes a recurrent problem, there's plenty of, NFL, NBA, you name it, athletes that have had bad foot and ankle problems that's limited their careers. So there's a bit of a gamble with it.
So you kind of answered my next question because, we talked about Liz Frank injuries and Jones fractures last week, and I was kind of curious, does this one fall under those categories? But it doesn't, it sounds like.
I don't think so, no. I mean, again, they did clearly say that the bone fracture was the 4th, so that they said that was what was fixed. But the disclosure on what kept him out during the season was just, quote, foot issues. But it's the same foot. The odds of him having a separate foot problem just happening to break a bone, I don't think that's just a coincidence. I think that's likely it was a stress fracture and that's what kept him out. And then he tried to come back and the bone just wasn't strong enough and pop, there it goes. And so that does happen. We do see that. In fact, again, it's not a Jones fracture, but that's what we see with the Jones. So people have this nagging foot pain, lateral foot pain. You get x-rays. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it's not quite as obvious. And then not always, but every once in a while, that athlete will go, really hard push off and pop. And there goes the bone. It goes from a stress fracture to an actual full complete fracture. And that's when you generally will go in and fix it. But yeah, that's again, reading between the lines, but that's my assumption based on what is out there.
Interesting. Moving to baseball here. So I saved a couple of these from a few days ago because I just love the wording on this, and hopefully that you can help explain a little bit more. But Edwin Diaz, the closer for the Dodgers, he's going to be missing some time. They're talking about the second half of the season. But the way they phrased it, he is slated to undergo a procedure to address loose bodies in his elbow. Now, I'm assuming he doesn't have actual bodies in his elbow and such, but, don't know if that's the technical term and such. But when we see that, what exactly is loose bodies and that type of procedure that he may be undergoing?
Yeah, so loose body removal with elbow arthroscopy is a very common procedure. In fact, that's probably 3/4 of the elbow scopes that I do are for that exact reason. So what are loose bodies? Anything floating in the joint. So we use that term as a wastebasket term for anything floating. Generally, it's going to be fragments of cartilage or debris that are in the elbow that basically, when something floats in the joint, the body kind of lays layers on top of it so it can get extra kind of soft tissue around it. Occasionally, they even become bony and get calcified. And as you might imagine, having things floating inside a joint are not good, right? So as far as the procedure is concerned, elbow arthroscopy, loose body removal, very easy, very straightforward. So again, we do those and people bounce back really well. What you start having to ask yourself is, why are there loose pieces in the elbow? Usually that's indicative of another problem. So in young athletes, for example, it could be what's called an osteochondritis dissecans or an OCD lesion. He's much older than that, so it won't be an OCD lesion. But you start worrying about elbow instability, where they'll have either, it's usually going to be the UCL, the Tommy John ligament. If that's a little bit loose, you get these dynamic forces on the elbow, and you can get your olecranon, or kind of the tip of your elbow, that can rub against the back of the humerus. You can get overloading of the radiocapitellar joint, which is on the outer part of the elbow, and those also can generate loose pieces in the elbow. So as far as like scope removal, that's going to be relatively straightforward. But if he's having it and they're saying he's going to be out a good chunk of time, because the recovery for that usually is like, honestly, we let people use their elbow as quickly as they want. Now, throwing a baseball like in MLB speeds is different, but still, it wouldn't be that long. So you're starting to wonder if, in addition to removing the loose bodies, there's also like maybe a cartilage issue they're going to microfracture or something like that. So at the face value, not a big deal, but I will tell you this is a big deal because that implies there's something deeper going on, and that's going to be that. I'm not saying it will, but it certainly could be a much bigger problem.
All right. Moving to college basketball, UConn just a couple days ago announced one of their players, Solo Ball, is going to have wrist surgery, and they've already ruled him out for next year. He's going to take a medical red shirt and return for the 2027-28 season. Now, he had been dealing with a wrist injury throughout the season. I haven't seen anywhere exactly what they diagnosed it with. But the fact that he's having wrist surgery and they already ruled him out for next year, is that a little extreme? Is that just being extra cautious with this whole thing, or what potentially could be the issue with his wrist?
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's a number of different things that could be going on there. I mean, there's about 1,000 different wrist enhancers that you can have. So yeah, it's difficult to say this is exactly what it is. But if it's going to be already starting the next season down, it implies it isn't something real simple. So let's say he had like a small TFCC tear, which is a little piece of kind of like a meniscus of the wrist, if you will, and you scope, clean it up. That should be like a weeks to months kind of thing. If you're talking about major bony issues or joint alignment issues, so reconstructions, realignment, osteotomies, now you're talking about things that have a much longer recovery. So again, it's unclear because if you read, there's really not a ton of information on what actually is the problem. So to guess as to what the surgery is going to be, that's even more of a question mark. But there's a handful of things that could be really quite serious. So let's say he had like a scaphoid fracture that didn't heal correctly. That can be a very devastating issue. Sometimes it's more like there's just kind of abnormal alignment of the wrist, so like a ulnar abutment syndrome, where the wrist is made up of your carpal bones, the small bones, but then also has your radius and your ulna. Some people's ulna is a little bit too long and it can rub against the bones. So we'll do what's called the ulnar shortening osteotomy, where we cut the ulna and shorten it. and that probably won't have as big a long-term implication. So again, this one is, without more information, it's hard to say definitively, but this could range from, hey, this is just a longer recovery and they're playing it safe, to this is actually a really serious long-term issue that may not go away, and it could be, career-threatening.
I got one more NFL draft player to ask you about, because he was initially thought of as a first-round pick, but he was not selected last night. Jermod McCoy, the corner from Tennessee. He had torn his ACL, missed last season, but he did run at the pro day, 4.3, 40-yard dash and such. But reading a little bit here, he did have some cartilage damage, which you have educated us many times when it comes to ACL.
Yeah, bueno.
Yeah, and then I'm seeing this term now, medical concerns about a, quote, bone plug in his knee. What's a bone plug?
Yeah, so when we talk about people who have cartilage issues in the knee, there's a number of ways we can address them. So at the time of an ACL injury, virtually every single patient has what's called a real significant pivot shift injury. So there's these really classic bone bruises that we see. So it impacts. Now, sometimes that impact right out the gate, you'll know at the time, like, this is a cartilage injury and this is bad right away. Sometimes it's a delayed presentation. So presumably with his, they knew it at the time. So if you have a significant cartilage defect, there are some different ways that you can do what we call articular restoration. It's a fancy way of saying fill that hole in. The most basic thing is to do microfracture, which we've talked about in the past. That's where you poke little holes in the bone. You have basically a clot that fills that hole in, and then you should have basically fibrocartilage that grows in its place. That is the most basic technique. More advanced techniques are going to be grafting things in its place. One of the techniques, and one of my personal favorites, is we use the term bone plug. That's kind of a generic term. Really, we're taking a core. So, like, a golf course, right? You move the hole on the green around. Mm-hmm. They take a core of dirt and grass and they move it. We do the same thing in the joint. We take a core of bone and cartilage, and with that bone and cartilage, we then restore that spot. Now, there's two ways you can do it. One is you take it from their own knee. So you'll actually go to basically an edge where there's not as much loading of that cartilage and take a piece and move it over. Or more commonly, we'll actually take a piece from a cadaver. So we'll take a match piece. So you get an MRI of your knee, and then we have a cadaver that has the exact same shape as your knee, and then we can take a core and move it into your knee. And the success rate is actually fairly high. So those are called osteoarticular transfers or allograft transfers. And I do quite a few of them, and I have really good success with them. So the problem, though, is it's one thing to do it for a guy or gal who's like, hey, I want to get back to living my daily life. High success rate. I'm a guy who wants to be playing in the NFL and putting those stresses on my knee. We just don't have the data to say that will or won't work. I have done these on people who've gone back to high school and college athletics. And so we know that it can tolerate that to a certain extent, but absolutely a red flag that's going to make a team say, okay, if I can take a guy that I think is just as good, doesn't have that potential downside, I'm going to do that. And that's why you see those guys slip. It's because, yeah, they're good, but there's that little, voice in the back of your head saying, well, that might not exactly work out the way we're hoping. So hopefully it does. And that, again, that procedure to put that cartilage and bone plug to fill a defect, it certainly could be something that works well. And I mean, if we start seeing, because this procedure is becoming more and more common. And so if we start seeing guys make it at the professional level, maybe that's going to be something that we can then start telling our athletes, hey, you can do this and get back to sports. Because, I mean, just to take a step back, I mean, there's been surgeries in the past that it used to be the kiss of death. I mean, ACLs, those alone, people are like, no, that guy's career's over. I mean, ACLs are people are getting back to professional sports frequently with that. And so maybe this is another procedure that if we can kind of continue to perfect, maybe that's a way to get athletes back at the highest level and give them the function that they need.
So I did see, just really quick to wrap it up, that there was a report that he might have to have surgery to replace that bone plug too. So, I mean, would that potentially be even a longer recovery for that?
So they're saying he may need to have a second one done?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that might imply that the plug they put in there either isn't taking correctly. So when you put the plug in, you actually don't want there to be a lot of bone. It's actually a relatively thin piece of bone with overlying cartilage. Sometimes the bone doesn't incorporate well and you get these cystic changes. So they may be seeing that saying, we're either seeing not good in bony incorporation, or sometimes the cartilage over the top starts to delaminate and fall off. Usually that doesn't happen, honestly, on either one of those counts, but presumably one of those red flags is popping up. So they're looking at it and saying, this is a cartilage issue that is not, the story's not over, is basically what it boils down to. So they're saying he's going to be looking at another one. So now if you're talking about a revision cartilage procedure, no question success rate goes down. So yeah, I mean, that is even a bigger red flag than what the initial thought I had on that. So yeah, that would be, there's something that's popping up on his MRI that's making the team say, this is potentially an issue that's going to keep coming back and keep coming back.
Yeah, I just quick Googled a follow-up, and I guess this was from Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network, said, quote, my understanding is the ACL itself is fine. Scans look good. The concern is about a bone plug that was used to repair a cartilage defect. Some of the doctors that have seen his scans are concerned that he will need another surgery to replace that bone plug. So,
yeah, that's exactly it. It's either going to be poor bone incorporation or there's already starting to be some cartilage delamination on the graft itself. So neither of those is a good thing. So that could certainly be a recurrent problem, and then that puts the knee in jeopardy. But certainly wish him the best, obviously.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got day 2 coming up. Obviously, day 3 tomorrow, rounds 4 through 7. You got your D tackle. What are you hoping now for your team to fill out the rest of their needs?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of what I said last week. I mean, I think we definitely need some guys in the O-line. I think we need some secondary, although it feels like a lot of teams need secondary right now. So yeah. We're getting lines on that one. To me, those are probably the two biggest things is shoring up the O-line. I mean, we could honestly take a couple draft picks in the O-line. I wouldn't be upset about that. You can't have enough good O-line, and that's a fact. So I would say O-line, secondary would be places that I'd focus.
All right. He's Dr. Austin Crowe, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Dude, appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the rest of the draft, and we'll catch up with you again soon. Okay, bud?
Yeah, absolutely. You take care.
You got it. There you go. Dr. Austin Crowe, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Let's take a quick break, and we'll get Brandon Berg in here. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes. Big thanks again, as always, to Dr. Crowe for joining us for our Inside the Training Room segments. And we go from one Vikings fan to another, and that's Mr. Berg here. I don't know, did you have a chance to listen to Dr. Crowe for a little bit?
I mean, yeah, I was listening to a little bit, and I mean, this is kind of one of those weeks especially. I think it's really cool that you have him on here because, I mean, especially going into it, in depth, like, especially the Jermod McCoy stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, okay, this is not, or this is something that's obviously having an impact. Well, why? I mean, you and I can't really say beyond what someone else is going to say, but when you can just kind of go to him and ask, and he's going to be able to give you a detailed response. I mean,
yeah. And honestly, because we were texting last night and such, and obviously with your pick, with Banks and such. Now that you heard him talk a little bit about that, does it make you feel a little bit better about the injury with the foot injury? Or
well, I mean,
was
it
that
could,
really,
it's like my thing, and I'll I'll tell you, or I'll tell the listeners kind of what I was telling you last night, and even just some other people I was texting with. Like, I wasn't a big fan of the pick. I mean, Caleb Banks is, you can see why. You can see why a team would fall in love with him as a prospect. A guy that's 6'6", 330, like big arms, like athletic. Like you can see it. My issue is one, the injury, which again, Doc kind of explained. Okay, well maybe that's not as big of a, that's fine. But also my thing, whenever you have someone like that and they say like, oh well, the potential's there, they could really put it together. My thing is like, well then why hasn't he yet?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
If you haven't done it in college necessarily to be that dominator that you're expecting of someone with those physical traits, then you expect that it's suddenly going to click when they go to an even harder level, which is the NFL.
Right.
So, I mean, I think above all else, I would just say that I think it's a very much a kind of it's the typical, almost getting to the back half of the first round boomer bust prospect. I think when you can look at this in 3 years, it's probably it's something you can either say it's an A or it's like a D. Like it's just and that's just kind of the direction they went. Like there's parts of like kind of the thought process that got them there that I like as far as like you spend first round picks on premier positions. So, defensive tackle has become a premier position. And So, like, I get that, even though there wasn't really anyone in this draft D-tackle-wise I was super enthralled with, in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I get it. I don't necessarily agree with it right now, but I get it. So, yeah, I mean, just not the direction maybe I would have went, but, that's just kind of how it is. Like, and now you just kind of, you kind of see if, what they saw and what they, heard when they talked to him, if that ultimately plays out. But,
right.
It was definitely a position of need. I mean, they're still a really young group in the defensive line, but that's adding someone that gives you something that you didn't really have from other guys. Jalen Redmond, more of like a penetrator. Levi Drake Rodriguez, who's a small school guy who did some good stuff, but still, like, they didn't have anybody that was like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. So what, we're going to talk a lot of draft today. Let's just be real here. So because, my first round pick was probably better than your first round pick. And that's why, hey, we got the jersey already for our first round pick. Look at that.
And it's even got the one on it.
Right. But the biggest surprise, at first I thought we were going to be, Carter being the first receiver at 4 is probably going to be, nope, it's Simpson going at 13. I don't know if you had a chance to see Sean McVay's
Yeah, he kind of had a pouty face.
He did. He was really short.
He kind of looked like he was 4 years old and told he couldn't get ice cream.
Yeah, so I don't know if he wasn't fully on board with the pick of that, but nonetheless, it was a big surprise to go 13.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and I know a lot of people say, well, Packers do that and all that, but Rodgers wasn't 13 and Jordan Love wasn't 13. I mean,
no, they were in the 20s.
And this is a little bit different where your starter literally just won MVP, and I know there's been talk about his back and whether he's going to be able to play or that, and you were maybe a couple plays away from going to the Super Bowl, so you could have gotten somebody that maybe impacted your team this year. We can make the case whether or not, it's. I think the thing that you and I would both agree, and a lot of people would agree, it was just a big surprise they went that route.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the guy that is probably doing the most, kind of puffing out his chest and rightfully so is probably Dan Orlovsky.
Oh, God, yeah.
Because that was something he had kind of called out earlier on, and I think, myself and a lot of other people kind of rolled their eyes at. I mean, I just, my thing with, I just kind of from what we see in the lead up, like with Ty Simpson, I didn't see it. And
the thing is, too, I don't know who said it last night, but to compare it, guy doesn't have a lot of college snaps. And they compared it to, like, Anthony Richardson and, who was the other one? But it wasn't a great comp.
Like that, No, that's generally something that doesn't bode well for like first round quarterbacks. I mean, you could even go back 2 years ago to JJ McCarthy.
Yeah,
and he was someone that they thought people. It was said that relatively speaking, like he didn't have a ton of snaps, and he was 2 years maybe.
Yeah,
and my thing when I look at Simpson, at least kind of from the outside looking in as a prospect, is he's not very big. He's 6 feet.
Yep.
He's 6 foot 210, whatever. Like. And he's not like the tools. I don't know. Like he doesn't exactly have like a big arm. Like so, it's not like he's this kind of physical freak, so to speak, that you're kind of molding. Where you mentioned the Packer examples. With Rodgers and Love, those are two guys where they sat and they developed, but you didn't really question the physical skill they had. You knew like, okay, they got an arm. Like it's just kind of. You took
tuning it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas here, it's like, well, how much are you going to be able to get out of that? Like, on the one hand, you have to believe supreme trust that Sean McVay can do it. So, like, that's kind of why maybe I'm not as I say outspoken, but just like as willing to kind of poo-poo on the pick because, like, okay, Sean McVay is like one of the best at this. So, like, if someone can get it out of Ty Simpson, it's him. But on the other hand, it's like. I just don't know how much is there to begin with. Like, this is a guy that played a half a good season. He played a good first half of last year with Alabama, and then down the stretch, he wasn't very good.
Right.
So, I don't know. Like, at this point, I'm not going to necessarily doubt the Rams, but at the same time, I was just kind of like, oh, well, I mean, I guess, better your team than my team, even though that wasn't going to be an option. But it's just like, okay, well, if someone else is doing something you think is a mistake, well, just let them do it.
And that's why I think you kind of agree. I don't like grading drafts the day after, the night or morning after. Let's let it play out and see what happens, and maybe it does work out. I don't know if the optics aren't great on McVay talking after it, and it's remember this is McVay who apparently with Jared Goff, yes, he went to the Super Bowl. Jared Goff didn't win, but was like, this isn't going to be the guy that's going to lead us. So obviously they made the move with Stafford and such. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to kind of see it progress here and in that. But, just the fact that he's going to come in and compete with Stetson, just like very curt and all that. And yeah, I don't know, but we'll see it play out. I don't know what broadcast you were watching last night.
I watched NFL Network.
That's the one I was in.
Yep.
So first of all, I think this was the Jay Glazer tease, right? I mean, a couple days ago when he's like, I got something juicy, but I can't say it until they're on the clock. It was that.
Yeah.
But Ian Rappaport, right before the pick, like, I appreciate, he obviously knew, right? He knew this was going to probably be, but then you drop that nugget right before the pick. Oh, Simpson, when he was thinking about coming out for the draft, his family reached out to Les Snead from the Rams to get his opinion, and Snead said that he was a first-round pick. And then literally a minute later, Ty Simpson's the Rams' first-round pick.
Right.
So it's like, so I appreciate not leaking that early on. But, it's with the whole NFL reporters and sources.
Right.
Yeah.
So, once the draft started, for the most part, at least especially through the Vikings pick, I just kind of stayed away.
I was not
because
on Twitter
because look, I mean, I had kind of as I was watching some live streams and stuff of people doing it, like, and they weren't spoiling either, but like you would always be like a pick or two ahead. Mm-hmm. So like who picked before the line? Oh, the Jets at 16, Yep. Like. Basically, it was like the Jets, and I think at that point maybe the Lions and I think maybe even the Vikings had their picks in, and it was kind of reported. So, but I didn't, I was just waiting.
Yep. I'm the same way. I stay off Twitter. Yeah. I stay off social media. As much as I can. I just want to kind of take it in organically. I do find a weird trend though sometimes when one of the analysts they're like debating on who this is going to be, and then it's like, well, it actually could maybe be this guy, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's that guy.
Well, and it's funny because that's not necessarily a new thing because, I mean, Chris Berman did that a lot too. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily he was spoiling it, but like I think his joke was always, because when it was in New York, he's always like, oh, a cab driver told me this. Yeah. And then, obviously he had some other info, but like that's just one of kind of those things that goes with it. But, to me, like you said, it's a little bit different there versus 5 minutes before it's actually announced, seeing, some insider report it.
So I think it was that Jets pick with the tight end. I think it was, who's the guy on the college guy? Joel Klatt. Joel Klatt said something about, or it could be, the tight end. And then it's like the tight end.
Yeah, because the talk was, I think, Lemon.
Yeah.
Where it's like, then he just kind of throws that in there, and then that's ultimately what it is.
Right. So I don't know if he knew or if it was just a good thing.
Guess.
Right. But, it was, a lot of trades in the back end. Was there a team that you thought, again, I don't want to grade.
Right.
I think you're kind of the same, but you look at it on the surface like, dang, that was not a bad night for this. I thought the Jet, like Eli mentioned, the Jets.
Yeah,
I thought did on paper a good job.
Obviously the teams with a couple picks are going to probably you just have more that you did, like the Giants. being able to kind of do what they did. Pass rush is one of the things you can just never have enough of.
Oh God, they're loaded now. Holy moly!
So that's just one of the like it's never a bad thing to have. More be able to get after the passer, and then maybe I just like the Giants' second pick because of his interview. Like it just kind of cracked me up where he's just basically telling Jackson Dart, and he's just like
the Eagles and their plethora of wide receivers now,
right? It's kind of like we were texting, like it could it be any more obvious that AJ Brown's getting traded?
Yeah,
yeah. But obviously, you just got to wait for June 1st for it. But it's like, okay, come on, like
it's clearly obvious.
It's
now.
And
then, but then they got Hollywood Brown. They signed Dontavian Wicks after the trade to $12 million. Now they got a wide receiver. They've got Devontae Smith.
So obviously, they're hedging their bet on, okay, so we're going to move on from this guy, but we've still got these other options. So that makes sense. Like, I think the thing that's going to be interesting for me is obviously on the Vikings end of thing, the Dylan Thieneman connection with him going to Chicago. That's something people are going to keep an eye on. Mm-hmm. But also, it's kind of a similar case, and maybe even more so because they traded with Dallas and Philly.
Yeah.
And they've traded before, so it's not like that's crazy. But the fact that, Mekhi Lemon, like if he becomes a great receiver, obviously Eagles fans may give Cowboys fans some crap for, oh, you helped us get this guy. But if he doesn't, then Cowboys fans be like, yeah, It's just interesting when that happens with divisional people.
Right. Yep. And I think, what was it, last time those two they talked about traded, it was Eagles got Devontae Smith, Cowboys got Micah Parsons, and then it was weird because then the spots that they switched was the Micah Parsons trade for Green Bay.
Right.
And the Eagles got a wide receiver again. So
yeah.
And then Cowboys drafted an edge rusher.
Right. So, well, I mean, the world works in mysterious ways sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you say? I'll admit, I thought the Cardinals were playing it up with the rumor.
I thought they were kind of putting it out there as kind of like oh no, we'll do it. We'll draft him. You better come trade with us if you want him.
Yeah.
But no, I mean
to me now, too, the Sipsa going to the Rams is even more interesting because I wonder if the Cardinals had any idea.
Right.
Because the Cardinals were always attached as a team that was going to trade
trading into the back end of the first round. Like, that's kind of what I expected. Like, a team, like the Texans or whoever it was that traded into, like, that last 6 picks. And they obviously they wouldn't take a quarterback, but, like, that was maybe the sweet spot for that.
Yep.
But, honestly, at this point, if I'm the Cardinals, I'm not drafting a quarterback. Because we know what this is.
Yeah.
You've got Jacoby Brissett, who apparently wants more money, and Gardner Minshew. Like, we know what this is.
Yeah.
We know what you're doing, and I'm not faulting him for it, but like don't do anything to suggest, unless maybe if you want to throw a 7th round pick at Jack Strand. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like,
I did see the billboard finally on Sunday too. So.
Did you? Okay. Yeah. It's right off 20, right by Elk Mound, 29. But like, don't do anything to change or to alter from the big picture, which is quarterback 2027.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the Jets one's intriguing too, because with their 2 offensive picks, they set them up for whoever that quarterback's going to be for next year. Just don't be too good so you don't draft.
And that's kind of the catch-22. Like, I always like the idea when it comes to drafting a quarterback of, like, don't drop a quarterback into a bad situation and then put pieces around him. Try to put some pieces around him before you drop him in there.
Right.
Because you're giving him a much better position to succeed versus, well, we're starting over our rebuild and you're a quarterback, but you kind of don't got a whole lot around you. But at the same time, you can't always predict that.
Yep.
If you get the one and that's your guy, well, then that's your guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, we got to take a quick break. Plenty more to get to, though. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes. By the way, I got to give a shout out to my guy Brandon. He came through with the frozen pizza hat.
Yeah,
it's probably going to make my kid jealous, but I don't care. I'm actually glad I went with the snapback.
Yeah,
it's really comfortable.
Right, and then because went Wisconsin Timberwolves game last Saturday, and I told Dan, I'm like, hey, look, I'll keep an eye out if you want me to, look and see, because that was initially going to be on our plan for when we went to the draft last year, but that's a little out of the way.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So got you that. Pick myself up a T-Rats hoodie. So
did you?
Yeah.
You didn't go with the frozen pizza?
No. I thought about it, but I just wanted a regular old gray T-Rats hoodie, just because I had no Timber Rattler stuff. So now I just got to get something for the Nashville Sounds and the new one, the Weston Warbirds, whatever it is.
That's right, because you do have a Shuckers. I've seen you wear the Shuckers.
I wear that, and I like. It's just like a long sleeve, but it's like a dry fit long sleeve. I wear that thing a lot. Mm-hmm. But, like, when I was there, I'm like, well, maybe it was because it was like 90 degrees in July, but I'm like, I don't know if I need a hoodie. So I just got that, and it was, I wear that thing all the time.
I love minor league, summer league, baseball when they do different versions. Did you see what the Madison Mallards are doing? They've got a bunch of different themes this year, but I might have to get this hat. I'm sorry, Express. I might have to get this hat. A big Lebowski theme. They've got the Lebowski with a baseball bat, and then the brim is the carpet.
Oh, my gosh.
Or the rug that tied the room together. And the players are wearing, like, jersey, like Lebowski, like the hoodie or the sweatshirt, excuse me, and, like, the Zuba pants or whatever you want to call them. I'm like...
I really hope they better have, like, a big deal on White Russians that day.
Oh, I didn't even think of that, but you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Oh, but yeah, that hat, it looked pretty sweet. So I'm like, because that's one of my favorite movies of all time. So, but it's like, yeah, it's Lebowski with a baseball bat. I'm like, well done. And the carpet.
There are some times I feel like John Goodman, and I'm not going to repeat the line verbatim, but am I the only one that cares about the rules?
Yes. Does it, Nom? Man, there's so many quotes we could say, but we get so much in trouble.
Right. So
I wish I had a really close. Can I just change your name to Donnie? Oh man. Well, all right, back on track here.
Back on track. As much as we get it back on track.
Yeah. So all right. Well, you got your defensive tackle now. What's the next biggest need that you'd like to see your team address today?
Secondary, be a corner or safety. I think, once you get into the second round, I mean, I talked kind of in my mock draft about kind of safety maybe not being the most high, like, positional value first round pick. Mm-hmm. And I think we even saw it a little bit with Thieneman where, he went 25 where, the hype was kind of Minnesota being the floor.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, there's some second round safeties I do like. AJ Halsey, I like Genesis Smith maybe a little bit more than most, just as like a center field kind of guy. But there's also corners out there too. I think getting a little. Regardless of whether Harrison Smith is coming back or not.
Yeah.
I just I think it's good to maybe get another safety kind of in the room to go with the group that they have. Otherwise, you could go receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I do think center is a spot that you'll see at some point tonight from them. That third round I mentioned in my mock is kind of a sweet spot for it. And there's a bunch of guys it could be. So, I mean, I'm not too particularly picky on who.
Right.
But, getting a young guy behind, it sounds like Blake Brandel is going to be the guy to start the year, and that's fine. I mean, he's a guy that's played everywhere on the line and, had some good games, had some bad games last year, but when you're throwing a guy that hadn't played center before at center, that's not a bad outcome.
Right.
So, a guy that can kind of, if he's ready, he can push him. If not, then maybe he's just a backup for a year. And otherwise, running back. I mean, running back, there's just not a lot of them. I mean, obviously we knew Jeremiah Love would be off the board. I think people were really connecting Jadarian Price with the Seahawks at the end of the first round here.
Which I was surprised Seattle, for all the trades in the back, for Seattle to only have 5 picks and they did not trade.
Right, yeah.
That kind of surprised me.
I think that kind of also tells you that they must have really liked Jadarian Price.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, Emmett Johnson and Jonah Coleman. Is it Jonah Coleman? Coleman. I know from the receiver from Washington, or running back from Washington. Is it Jonah Coleman?
I think you're right.
But
you have me second guessing.
Right. I'm just trying to think.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I was thinking of a different Coleman running back, but yeah, either of those guys I think would be fine if they went today.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm not too locked in on. Well, it has to be this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
would you have rather have had that Oregon safety with the 18th pick?
Probably. I just think maybe again, Banks is such a hit or miss. And I mean, you saw, with some of the big names, Bill Kuiper and Dalen Jeremiah and even like Dane Brugler from the Athletic, they all had Banks as more of a second round guy because of the injury concerns and then just maybe the lack of consistency for someone that is as talented as he is. So probably, I mean, I think if it was my pick at that point, I think Mekhi Lemon probably would have been the guy I would have went with because I never would have shied away from adding another receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But the draft is 3 days for a reason, I guess. So you kind of see what happens next.
Right. What do you think about the shortened rounds? I saw you had a tweet about 3 hours.
Yeah, like I mean, it moved. Like it moved. It was done in like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Which I get for like the viewer. Like I get it. Like, hey, that's good.
Selfishly, I loved it.
I loved it, but at the same time, I also loved the kind of the faux point of pride of being able to kind of grind through it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh no, I sat through it, even though it took forever, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But no, ultimately, it's a good thing. Like, and look, here's the thing: it went 3 hours, and there was still enough pomp and circumstance where it could have went like 2.5.
Oh yeah.
If they really wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure for them, spanning 7 to 10 was perfect.
Yeah.
Because that is just all in prime time.
Yep.
So it worked out well for the NFL.
I agree. All right, we got to take our final break as we approach halftime. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes. Mark your calendars because on May 2nd, Saturday, May 2nd at the VFW Post 305, it is the American Legion Baseball Meat Raffle at 3 p.m. Head on over there and help raise funds to support American Legion Baseball. Who doesn't love a good meat raffle in Wisconsin? Right, Brandon? So, again, put it on your calendars. It's Saturday, May 2nd, 3 p.m. at the VFW Post 305 for the American Legion Baseball Meat Raffle. Surveyor's got our trivia question here. He says, good morning, DK and Brandon. Trivia time, NFL Draft Edition. Packers have had 8 second-round picks since 2020. Can you name at least 5 players? Brandon, the Vikings, for some reason, hate second-rounders and have only had 2 second-round picks since 2020.
That's true. Like, no, and
that's like, I did not realize that.
To me, that is absolutely not surprising because, that was kind of a point of contention with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, even though that also goes back to the last few years of Rick Spielman, where I think it was during Adolfo-Mensah's era, he had half as many top 100 picks as like the Packers and the Lions.
Wow.
and people kind of dinged him for his draft. It's like, but also he didn't have that many picks. So it's like,
right.
How do you do well in the draft? Well, generally you just have more picks.
Right.
So especially top 100 ones. So no, that's not surprising at all.
Can you name them, or do you want to wait till after the break and think about it a little bit? So it's since 2020.
So second rounders.
Second rounders.
So
and there's only 2 of them.
Boy, we can wait.
You want to wait?
Yeah, we can wait.
A little drama to it. I think I could do 5 out of the 8. I already thought of 3 right away. So, yeah, I think I could do we'll wait till past the 8 o'clock. Just past top of the 8. We'll kick off the 8 o'clock hour with that. How about that? That makes sense? Try to spit it out, Dan. So
I've got one.
You got one?
But since it's since 2020, yep. Obviously that means it had to be in 2020.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got one. I just got to think of who the guy in 2020 was.
All right. So I think I'm going to try for the 8. I think I can do it.
All right.
I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to show off a little bit. So we'll see if I can do that, or maybe try to get as much as possible. So all right, just a couple minutes left. So coming up next hour, here's the plan. We'll do that. We'll answer Surveyor's trivia question. We've got a little cream of the crop. We've got a little pump the brakes, full throttle, AGM Automotive. We got some local sports roundup brought to you by Carpet City Flooring Center. We'll talk some Brewers baseball. The Bucks have a new head coach. 2 thumbs up, 1 thumb up, 2 thumbs down, 1 thumb down. How do you rate it and that such? Brewers begin a series with the Pirates starting tonight. Paul Skeens, Brandon Woodruff. Brandon's going to the game tomorrow where he will see the Miz Kid on the. Is it the Windbreaker game?
The Miz, yep.
Windbreaker. So that means next Friday you're going to be coming in wearing a windbreaker probably. So if they have your size.
They do.
They do?
They don't have many sizes. Like, they don't have Wisconsin sizes for many people, but yeah.
So we still have lots to get to here before we plus obviously day 2 of the draft in rounds 2 and 3. So Packers fans, we're going to be on the clock tonight. Who is a player that is left that is kind of the target, or who do you think that Green Bay should go after? All right, you can make your picks. Let us know. Hit us up on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line, 715-830-1912, or on the Section 105 chats where apparently our Ty says, I'm literally wearing my Madison Muskies Mallards theme shirt right now. That is another theme, is the Muskies. I think they incorporate like a fish fry with it, which is awesome. And they got another one too, the dog Bat Boy. Dog Bat Boy. I was like, dang it. So, all right, halftime.